Now I'd like to invite Dr. Souheil Ghannouchi, a physicist and Islamic scholar, to give a speech explaining the difference between two controversial topics, jihad and terrorism.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صفيه من خلقه وخليله أمين على وحيه. It's a pleasure to be here in this event, and I'd like to thank those who organized it and those who are here. And I hope that it won't be just a conference where people come and give speeches, maybe feel good, get excited, and then go back, forget everything, and go back business as usual. That's what, most of the time, that's what we do. And that's what we shouldn't be doing in this case, especially that this is a cause that is forgotten. Not many Muslims know about it. And those who know about it, they have very vague idea about it. And they have also the wrong understanding of it. If you ask, even in a mosque here, how many Muslims are aware, or all over the world, of this plight of East Turkestan, you won't find many. And if you find people who heard about it, they heard about it as an issue of human rights, maybe minority issue, but to understand it as an issue of occupation and self-determination, which is completely different thing. Not many people, I'm afraid not many people understand it this way. And unfortunately, this happened to us with other cases. We discovered Bosnia only after genocide. We discovered Muslims in Myanmar, same thing. So it's so unfortunate that Muslims are not aware even of Muslim causes. Never mind being involved, because if you're not aware of something, definitely you won't be involved in it. Before I get to the topic of jihad and terrorism, and I don't know how they mix them together, I'd like to say that if people are serious about addressing this issue as an issue of occupation and self-determination, countries don't get occupied by wishful thinking. There is a prescription, there is a recipe for how people are liberated from occupation. The will must be there. It must become, liberation and independence must become the dream of the whole population, old and young, educated, and everybody will be dreaming with that. People are ready to pay the price for it. And then whatever you can do from here or from anywhere is going to be just support. But no country was gained its independence without resistance and without persistence. So that has to be kept in mind. We wish things can happen easily and quickly, but that's not how things work. And of course, no country gained its independence without resistance. We just celebrated the Independence Day a couple of weeks ago here, and everybody celebrated independence. How they got it? I don't think they got it by just complaining or by begging for it, but they got it by through resistance. Now to the jihad and terrorism. I don't know how you can put these two things together. And my understanding is that Muslims have abandoned jihad. Most Muslims abandoned, or all Muslims abandoned jihad, and few Muslims are practicing terrorism. They have nothing really in common. When you put them together, there is nothing in common between these two. There is a concept that is highly cherished in Islam, and I will discuss it in a minute. What does it mean? And there is something that has no roots in Islam, which is just to terrorize people or to try to force yourself or your thoughts or your ideas on people. Has no roots in Islam, and Islam tackled this from the roots by saying there is no compulsion in religion. That's all. There is no compulsion in religion. So if religion cannot be forced on people, what can be forced on people? Allah made it clear that there is no coercion or compulsion on religion. Now, Jihad, which many Muslims don't understand, and nowadays it's a concept that it was associated with many horrible acts, so people try to avoid even talking about it, means simply that to strive and you do your best, you do your utmost in everything you do. Whether you're studying, you're working, in your role as parents, or you do your best. And it is related to basically excellence. Jihad is related to another concept in Islam called ihsan, which is that you try to perfect everything you do. You do your best, you push yourself, and you do your utmost. And the Prophet made it clear that Allah loves when one of us does something to perfect it. In particular, you do jihad in serving the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means you serve the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with everything you can. Now the question, what is this cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's where people get it wrong. So until now, I don't think people disagree. You jihad, striving, doing your utmost in everything, including or especially in serving the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do it with everything you can, all your resources, or your skills, your money, your everything. You put it in the service of the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Which Muslims have abandoned? If you understand this deen properly, you find out clearly that the cause of Allah, the defining mission of believers, the divine mission is basically to uplift people and to serve the common good. Make this world a better place for everybody. With a special focus on justice, on establishing and maintaining justice. That is the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah loves to see people living in peace, to see people prosperous, to see justice being served and prevailed. That's what it is. And to convey the message of Islam in the best possible way, which essentially means by example. Essentially means conveyed by examples. Until Muslims can present role models, can make a significant contribution to the societies in which they are living, there is no da'wah. No matter how good, how many brochures we make and how good we make them and how many websites, it doesn't click. Everybody can say whatever they want about their religion. People will wait until they see the product. They see the models. And that's where, unfortunately, we did not succeed. So that's the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is, again, to advance the cause of justice, to serve the greater good, to convey the message of Islam, and to be the best ambassadors of Islam. And again, in doing so, you do your utmost. Where this confusion between jihad and terrorism came from? Unfortunately, most of it is done by Muslims. You read the books of the seerah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the life of the Prophet, you find them a list of battles. The seerah, books of seerah, you find them chapters, chapter about the Battle of Badr, then chapter about the Battle of Uhud, etc. As if that's what Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. And then the movies, the films that Muslims make, also about history, they also create this image in our mind that or establish this link between jihad and violence and terrorism. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca did not ask more than what we have here. He asked the people in Mecca, if you don't like this message, leave me alone. خَلُّوا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ النَّاسِ, which translates into freedom of speech, which is guaranteed here. Which means if Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent here, there will be no hijrah, no migration, there will be no battle whatsoever. If he was sent in a world where freedom of speech is guaranteed, that's all what we wanted. That's all what he sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted. So that's the meaning of jihad. What is fighting in Islam? Has a different word. It's called qital. So we're talking about jihad. That's how it is explained. Then there is fighting. Now make no mistake about it. Islam does not ask people to turn the other cheek. So when you are faced with aggression, Islam encourages people to retaliate and defend themselves. That's all the verses says about this. But says, fight those who fight you. And do not exceed the limits. And then when you retaliate, وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. If you retaliate, also, it's a law of equality or qasas. You retaliate exactly the way where you were attacked. And yet encourage people to forgive and to encourage mercy among people. So always tells you that you have the right to do this, but yet you are encouraged to forgive. There is nothing that, no exceeding, you are not allowed to exceed the limits. And this fighting in Islam, if you read the conditions for it and the restrictions, if you read the advices that Rasul ﷺ gave to the Muslim army, at the end you will say, how can they fight with all these restrictions? You don't cut a tree, you don't destroy a building, you don't do this, you don't do that, there is nothing left. So many restrictions. So there are many conditions for it to happen, and there are so many restrictions. That's fighting in Islam. And you know what? When Muslims have the proper understanding of their deen, they didn't like fighting. Quran tells us, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. So when you see somebody enjoying slaying people, you know that has nothing to do with deen. When people had the proper understanding of Islam, at the time for Rasul, they didn't like fighting. Quran is telling us that fighting was prescribed on you even though you don't like it. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. It's not something they were wishing for. It's because that's the nature of a human being. So it is, peace is the norm, fighting is the exception with all these conditions and restrictions. Some people refer to the word terror was mentioned in one verse in Quran. And if you read the context, the verse itself, it is mentioned in the context of deterrence, to deter people from attacking you, which what United States was doing in the Cold War era. It's basically developed, you strengthen yourself to a point where your enemy does not dare to attack you. So it was never mentioned in the context that you terrorize people or you kill people or you attack people. It was mentioned in the concept وَأَعَدُّ لَهُمْ مَسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ مِّن رِبَاطِ الْخَيْلِ تُرْهِبُونَ بِهِ عَدُوَّ اللَّهِ وَعَدُوَّكُمْ. It's in context of deterrence. And the verse after that says, if they incline to peace, then you do so. وَإِن جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا. Still, always. So when they cease, فَإِنِ انْتَهَوْا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. If they stop, you stop. You fight those who attack you, which overall can be translated in today's word in the concept of just war. There is no holy war in Islam, there is just war, which everybody agree about. And in this context, it is agreed, nobody object to the fact that those who are occupied, they have the right to resist. That's how all nations, including this one, gained their independence. Islam tackled this concept also from the roots. If you think about it, terrorism is the end game. That's not the roots. The violence that you see, at its roots, it has this wrong concept of jihad. But it's also, at its roots, there is this judgmental attitudes that some Muslims adopted, which is to put yourself in a position to decide on people, to judge people. This is Muslim, that's a non-Muslim, that's kafir. And then within Muslims, that's a good Muslims, that's a bad Muslim. And of course, what starts this way ends up in killing. So if you want to solve it, then you have to tackle it from the roots. It's not going to be solved at the end. We have to get this judgmental attitude out of the mind of our people. That just mind your own business. Focus on your own deficiencies. You don't put yourself, Allah is the judge. فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَعَلَيْنَا الْحِسَابُ. You convey the message, we'll judge people. So nobody should put himself in a position to judge people, because that's the beginning of it. That's the beginning. When you start judging people, then it ends with this. Somebody say these divides the world into Muslims and non-Muslim. The other say because these are non-Muslim, then they can be killed. Somebody divides Muslim into good Muslims and bad Muslims. The other will go a step further and say because these are bad Muslims, then they deserve to be killed. So if it has to be tackled, it has to be tackled from the roots. I will leave you with one question. Why, given all of this, why we still have young Muslims from here, from different parts of the world, attracted to this nonsense? This version of Islam that calls for killing, and this why? And in my opinion, because there is no alternative. Because that's the only package available. What we are presenting here in our communities, that's not a package. These are very scattered ideas. There is nothing coherent that is presented. So people are attracted to this nonsense because there is no alternative presented to them, and that's something that we cannot, it is long overdue to tackle, because otherwise we're going to leave our children and future generation between these bad choices. Either abandon their deen, stick to the deen that is confusing and limiting, or be attracted to this horrible and violent version of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Brother Ghannouchi.